How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Set 6, and today we're going to be starting our series where we take the first soldier chapters from Ever Crisis and we break them down and just briefly go over the story. This is something that I'm going to be doing for people who don't necessarily want to play Ever Crisis, or they don't do mobile gaming or anything like that, but they still want to gain access to the story. So the plan is, go through each chapter, break it down, look at any spots where it might connect to, the OG or any other part of the compilation, and see what kind of information we can get out of it, because there's definitely going to be stuff in this that connects to Rebirth, 100%. So, without further ado, we're going to start. Don't forget, drop a like on the video, subscribe for future content, but let's begin with Chapter 1 of The First Soldier. So the chapter opens with Sephiroth kind of stood in the middle of the battlefield. It's the clip that we've seen from the trailers for Ever Crisis, where he's trying to get hold of Genesis, and he's not getting an answer. We see loads of enemies kind of dotted around that have been killed, and then out of nowhere we see Glenn turn up. The scene that we've all seen from the trailer, and Glenn's kind of talking about how Sephiroth's trying to reach out to a friend, which confuses Sephiroth a little bit because, it seems like Glenn knows what's going on. And I would guess that this is going on alongside the events of Fort Tamlin from Crisis Core, so where we see the massive exodus of soldiers being led by Genesis. I would guess this is something related to that, and that Glenn is in some way connected to the Genesis exodus. But then we quickly leave this scene and we're in a helicopter, another scene that we've seen quite heavily in a lot of the promotional material for Ever Crisis and the First Soldier back when that was a thing. And it's Glenn, Matt and Lucia, and they're on their first mission with Glenn as their team leader. There's a little bit of chatter going on between them, between Glenn and Matt. Matt tells Glenn that he's a bit too aggressive and he'll get a bad rap, but Glenn kind of suggests that a bad rap is better than no rap, which is the first of a few little hints towards Glenn's mindset and how he may act in the future of this story depending on how things pan out. We'll see how things go, but we're keeping an eye on Glenn, 100%. Now, it seems that the group are part of a survey unit, and if we think back to the short story, the investigation unit in the painting, that's about how Shinra used to send out small investigation units to kind of survey an area that they thought was high in Mako, in order to see if it was worthwhile putting a reactor there, if there was any threats there that would need to be cleared out, that sort of thing. So it seems like we're one of those investigation units. But the mission isn't going to go smoothly because the chopper is shot down by another chopper. So, yeah, good start. Excellent start. The chopper crashes, Glenn wakes up, finds Lucia, displays a little bit of compassion for his team, saying things like he'll do anything for his team. So he's kind of a responsible leader. He's trying to show that he feels like he's in a position of care for his team. He has to look out for him. It makes sense. But again, that's another little thing that kind of hints towards something that may happen in the future. Because while we may have seen Glenn a couple of times, we've not seen Matt and Lucia at any point beyond the story of Ever Crisis. So, maybe. Who knows? Now, the two begin to search for Matt and they get attacked repeatedly, and during all of these little scenes that we go through in Ever Crisis, there's going to be constant battles going on in between. If anything big happens, I'll point it out, but in general, it's just against the general trash mobs of the area. So, yeah, we keep on getting into combat, we keep looking for Matt. Lucia says about how the rich amount of Mako in the area kind of affects the life there, and Glenn makes the suggestion that we should sell the info to the bestiary, so maybe that's something that's going to be added in at some point. But Glenn and Lucia, they get changed, weirdly. Why not just wear the outfit on the chopper for the mission? I don't know, I'm confused by that. But yeah, they go out to find Matt and the mission objective. They find a Mako detection kit among the crashed wreckage of the chopper, which feeds into my suggestion that they are one of these Mako survey units looking for a spot to put a reactor down, basically. And we'll get further confirmation of that as we go further in. Now, Glenn and Lucia keep on searching for Matt, with Glenn saying that he wouldn't be able to go on if he doesn't find him, or he's not that kind of person. Again, something that I'm sure is going to come back later. I think they're being maybe a little bit heavy-handed with it, but I get it. They've not got a massive amount of time to establish Glenn, I'm guessing, so I don't know. But it feels like they're being a bit heavy-handed with the fact that Glenn will do anything for his team, and if anything happens to his team, he will be pissed. I feel like that's what we're shooting for in a big way, so keep an eye on that. We also find out that the team are part of Soldier P0 from a project known as Project Zero, which we know is the first phase of the soldier program, essentially. It's kind of like the early stages of it, an elite fighting force, and it kind of goes on alongside the Genova project in the early days of Shinra. So we get some details about these characters, and Glenn's looking to prove himself and prove that he is more than Zero. So that's, again, something to keep an eye on. But Matt eventually catches up with the group. He finds them, telling them that they're being too loud. I'm going to blame Glenn for that. He's giving me strong Zell vibes. But then the group review their mission, which is to survey the main island of Rador, which is the area that we're in, for suitable sites to build Mako reactors. The main island apparently contains rich Mako resources, so that's where they were meant to be heading, the main island of Rador. But it seems like they've crash landed on the wrong island due to the fact that they were shot down by another chopper, and Lucia suggests that it must be a remnant of the Radoran army, a group that doesn't care for Shinra after Shinra nearly wiped them out. So obviously there's been some conflict between Rador and Shinra. Shinra won the conflict quite obviously, but there are still little resistance pockets left, it would seem, and one of those took our chopper out and left us stranded on the wrong island. Ludicrous. Matt suggests that they send out a distress signal, but Glenn refuses, saying that they're going to finish the mission and get paid. So they set out to recon the area, try and figure out where they are, make sure that they are on the wrong island, and if they are, figure out a way to get off it and get to the correct island. Now, the group figure out quite quickly that they actually aren't on the main island, and while they're exploring everything, they discuss a creature that they had to fight as part of their final assessment, with Matt saying it's the worst thing that he's ever fought in his life. So, you know, a nice little bit of trauma for the soldier P0 people. You gotta have a little bit of that trauma if you're going to be in Shinra and soldier, you know. Without the trauma and the PTSD, you're not doing it right. We keep on exploring, we keep on fighting. They talk about whether or not Rador uses monsters as a weapon in the same way that Wutai does. And Lucia says it's a bad idea. They aren't dogs, they can't be trained. It's possibly the most factual thing that's ever been said. Good on you, Lucia. But Glenn's just generally uncomfortable about the whole situation. He feels like even while there's no military or anything, they're missing something. And they eventually end up getting surrounded when, out of nowhere, a dog appears and scares off the Balwa, which are the monsters that have been chasing them. These big, weird, frog-looking things. They're not good. But the dog comes along, chases them off, and a boy arrives who tells them to follow the dog. The group do this, and eventually they get clear of all of these Balwa, but they are in general suspicious of this boy, especially given the fact that they've been shot down. They're wondering if, you know, the boy's leading him into a trap or something like that. But Glenn says that he's absolutely convinced that, you know, the kid's telling the truth. We just need to follow the kid and we'll get out of it. So the party follows Glenn and follows the kid, and eventually they arrive at the orchard. Now, the orchard is an area that is seemingly safe to most monsters, because most of the monsters on the island can't stand the smell of the fruit that grows there. Now, Glenn asks if the fruit are the product of a mutation, as he's never seen anything like them before, but the boy doesn't know. He does say that they only grow around these parts, so maybe it is like a normal fruit that's been mutated or something like that. But then, moments later, we get attacked by monsters. Now, these monsters usually hide in this forest to avoid predators, so in order for them to attack us, they must have felt like we were a threat, or at least that's what the boy suggests. Now, the group continue to be a bit sus about the kid, but Glenn is the one who just flat out says, no, it's fine, let us carry on. Now, they talk about the fruit a little bit more in the orchard, and they suggest that it might be the thing that maintains the balance of living things by keeping the Balwa away. It kind of gives all the other creatures a bit of a safe haven where they can exist, while the Balwa exist outside. I wonder if I'm saying Balwa right. I think I am. We find out that the doggo, who Glenn has been calling Stamp up to this point, is called Rifu, but we don't quite manage to find out the boy's name as we get attacked again by something big. And this is the Balwa King, and the boy comments on how it's a bit weird that this monster came so close to this area, and that it could be the flow of energy and Mako in the area could have changed, and that could have led to the monster, you know, straying into the orchard. But it's a bit weird. It could be that it's following our friends, who knows. But the boy then eventually asks them if they're with Shinra, with Glenn saying that they are emissaries, sent to make sure that the embers of war that might be smouldering don't go starting any pesky little forest fires or anything like that. Basically making sure that there's no resistance. The boy sees through this immediately. And that's the end of the chapter. So, an interesting one. We're getting kind of a lot of establishing stuff. We find out that, you know, the group is one of those survey teams that we've seen that are looking for a spot to build a Mako reactor. We learn that Shinra have already had a conflict in this area with the Redorans and won. But we also find out that there are still some Redorans kicking about and, you know, resisting. So it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out. This is just the first chapter, so there is quite a bit of stuff in each chapter. We're going to get into chapter 2 in the next few days, where we get a little bit more information from the boy and we start looking for a way to get off this island and onto the main island. So yeah, that's going to be the chapter 2 video, but like I say, this one's just very much an establishing one. We find out who our team is and what they're here for, as well as a healthy dose of foreshadowing regarding Glenn and his mindset and how things may play out in the future. So there's a lot to keep an eye on here. Like I say, the next episode of this will come out in the next couple of days when I get chapter 2 done. I'm going to try and catch up as quick as possible so that I've got everything that's already released done, hopefully by the end of the week. That's what I'm going to shoot for, so keep an eye out for that. And yeah, that's going to be the end of this episode, so thanks very much for watching. Don't forget, drop a like on the video, subscribe for future content, share it about, do all the things. But more importantly than anything, have a great day.